magnets
Oh, really?
and paint, basically. Yeah.
So it's wood?
Yeah.
No way.
All the
I
ice
thought it
cream
was,
pieces are wood.
I thought it
Well,
was plastic.
the bin is plastic, but
Mm.
everything else is wood.
I wanted to do a little game before we got into the episode, if you're down.
Sure. I mean, as long as I don't have to like sing or do charades or something like that. Yeah.
So you will have to. No, just kidding. No, actually, so what I wanted to do was I wanted to kind of in relation to what we're going to be talking about today. I wanted to do this challenge for you. I'm going to play a snippet of a few video game songs themes and see if you can recognize them.
Oh my gosh. I'm not as knowledgeable on these things as you and Andrew are.
I have number 1. You ready?
Yes.
This one's pretty easy. I think you'll get this immediately.
Tony Hawk.
Yeah, you know it. See, it's not that hard, right? It's pretty easy.
I guess if you play songs that games that we played heavily as children, then yeah.
That's the relation between all of them, is that these are all from games that you for sure have played at some point, and I was super into as a kid. So
Okay.
you ready for the next one? This is number 2.
Tomb Raider.
Oh dang, you got that one super
One
fast.
note. I'm glad you're not asking me like which one, like Tony Hawk 2 or whatever.
Oh no, these are pretty easy. Throw a little more challenging one at you then.
Oh no.
All right, number 3.
Pokemon.
Yeah.
Good times.
Yeah, it takes me back.
Yeah, it does. I actually got a Game Boy emulator for my phone.
Did you?
I found it somewhere. I mean, I want to say it was like some like Instagram reel or something like that, where it was like, things you didn't know that are free kind of thing. And so that was one of them. And I was like, okay, so I downloaded it, and then I was like, what game should I test this on? Pokemon Yellow.
Oh, Yellow, of course.
Yep.
Classic. How did Pokemon Yellow hold up, by the way? Was it still fun?
Yeah. I mean, the graphics obviously are very outdated, but...
All right, last one. Save the big one for last.
Oh, Final Fantasy VII. I had a feeling you were going to choose one from there.
Of course, you know it.
You gotta. That was like life-defining game right there.
Brenda's actually been playing a game recently, and she was the one that approached me about it. So I don't know what reminded her of this game, but she asked me if she could play Portal.
What?
Yeah, Portal 1. So that's why I fired up the PS3, because that's why I have Portal 1 on, It's on the orange box.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to say, that old orange box. We have the physical orange box.
Mm-hmm. Yep. All right, should we hop in?
Yes.
All right.
Let's do this.
I calm myself. I get too excited. How you doing, everybody? Welcome to Aflixionados podcast, episode 21. My name is Eric, and the other voice occupying your head this time is a proud mother of 3, lab geek, somebody's sister, and co-host, Stephanie.
Hello.
Thank you to all the listeners out there for joining us. The show is available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, as well as some of those lesser-known streaming services like Podvine, Simplecast, and Wisdom. I only found out about some of those recently.
Wow.
Oh, hey, we're even on YouTube at Aflixionados Podcast, so go check us out over there.
Nice.
As always, new episodes drop on the first Saturday of each month, 5 a.m. Pacific. We are a monthly podcast where we primarily talk about films that range from mind-numbing to mind-blowing. Sometimes we also cover TV shows or other forms of media. Of course, we will be getting into spoilers here, and there will be only the healthiest amount of expletives tossed in. You have been warned. If you ain't ready, then get ready, because in today's episode, we will be discussing the fantasy action rom-com Scott Pilgrim versus the World, released in 2010, directed by Edgar Wright.
Woo!
Now, really quick, this film revolves around a slacker musician who is trying to win a competition to score a record deal while also battling 7 evil exes of his newest girlfriend. Co-written, produced, directed by Edgar Wright. What I wanted to kind of start off with, Steph, was how we first discovered Scott Pilgrim, because I learned this movie slash comic book from you.
Of course. I feel like all the comic book movies, you're always like, I found out about this one from you.
And this was around the time where you were like heavily into comics in college, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. So actually, I'm trying to remember because I'm pretty sure that I read the comic because of the movie.
Oh,
This is one of the
really?
ones where I actually read the comic. Like I saw the movie and I really liked it.
Okay.
I want to say that's how it went. It's so long ago, dang it. that
And there was a lot going on at the time.
I guess. Well, that was actually the year that I met my husband, and Scott Pilgrim was the first movie we ever saw in the theaters together.
Wow, dang. So it has a huge significance. That's
It
cool.
does. It has a little bit of significance for me. And then if you recall, the video game came out, and you and Andrew and I played that one together.
Mm-hmm.
So Andrew was actually a little bit sad that he couldn't get on this podcast with us.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but he didn't express that until today. So
How does he feel about that movie?
he loves it. And we were actually watching it today, because I watched it right before this. And well, I started it at work today, but I'm a supervisor now, so I actually have work to do.
Not to mention, you were kind of indisposed for a little bit there.
Oh yeah, for a long time. Yeah, we had to put this off twice because I was sick. The first week we had to postpone it. I was actually sick with like a fever and stuff. And then the second time we had to postpone it, my voice was completely gone from the sickness the week prior, which is BS. So
You sounded worse the week after than
yes,
the week of.
yeah, exactly. Like I had no voice. My voice finally came back. My voice finally started to come back this past Saturday, and by Sunday it was finally like mostly back. Like it was still a little
Mm.
husky sounding,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that
but
raspiness going on.
yeah, little bit of sexiness.
Can you imitate what your voice would have sounded like had we not postponed it the second time?
It would have been like it would have just been like this.
Oh, so you'd have been like a heavy smoker.
I get, yeah, I just had no voice at all. It was like I was like half whispering, crackling in and out of smoker and whisper and
Oh, geez. Well, Scott Pilgrim is based off of a graphic novel series by Brian Lee O'Malley. The Scott Pilgrim versus the World title was actually borrowed from the series' second volume, right? Not the first one, if I recall.
I believe so.
I forgot what the first one was actually called. It was like Scott Pilgrim and something else. Gets a Life or something
Yeah,
like that.
yeah, something like that. Yeah.
So you had heard of the movie first. Was it your friends in college that introduced you, or was it Andrew that introduced you to Scott Pilgrim?
Neither.
You just discovered on your own.
Yeah, that was one I discovered on my own.
Gotcha. Okay.
Oh, you know what? You know what it was? I remember now. Okay, so what it was that the movie was coming out, but it wasn't out yet. I saw the trailer for it, and I was like, "Oh, this looks interesting." Found out it was based on a comic, so I,
You studied up.
yeah, basically, I read the whole comic. I don't think I got through the whole thing before I saw the movie, but I was pretty well into it, so I was like in the middle of it.
Okay, so let's get your thoughts on the comics then. So were they good enough to actually continue before the movie, or were you just kind of like, I mean, this is fun, supplemental?
Oh no, I definitely enjoyed it. It's interesting to me because the movie did a good job of capturing this whole it's real life, but also in a video game world kind of thing because everyone just can spontaneously get up and start fighting out of nowhere.
I was thinking of it like a musical, but instead of singing, you're fighting.
Yeah, it was like instead of spontaneous singing, it's spontaneous video game all of a sudden.
Yeah, because in musicals, everyone's dancing and singing, and it's fine. No one bats an eye. And so in this one, everyone starts fighting, and everyone's just like fine with it.
Yeah, and but like other video game things start happening too, and everyone's just cool with it. Like
yeah,
when Julie starts censoring herself.
That's actually in the comics.
Yeah, that's actually, I think it is, but it's it's just like the black bars.
Yeah.
But like similar to the movie, you might at first think like, oh, she's being censored in the movie, or she's being censored in the comic, but then a character will comment on it like, how are you doing that?
And she's just like, don't fucking worry about it.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So when you first saw the trailer then, since this was kind of what started everything, what was your initial thought on it? Were you just kind of like, oh, that could be fun? Or you're like, hell yes, let's go?
I was pretty much like, this looks like it's right up my alley,
Okay.
It's
almost
it
like
a
campy
fun
humor.
Movie, it's got the comedy bits, and it's got the nerdy bits. It was playing on being nerdy was pretty popular at the time, so it was definitely playing that up and targeting that audience and whatnot. And so I was like, hey, it's targeting me.
This whole movie is like nerddom in 2
It's
hours.
great. It's great. Yeah.
Yeah, it's awesome. And you can tell that it was done by someone that actually has a good amount of knowledge about the nerd culture and everything. And I felt like they definitely did it justice for sure.
Speaking of, you're talking about Edgar Wright. Speaking of Edgar Wright, Andrew did want me to mention that he was originally supposed to direct Ant-Man, but that ended up falling through. So imagine what he could have done with Ant-Man, right?
He didn't do Ant-Man? I thought he
He
did
had a
it.
writing credit in Ant-Man, but
Oh,
that's
did
it.
he?
He did not do Ant-Man. So he also did Baby Driver, which is an amazing movie if you haven't seen it. So
That's
check
right.
that one out. And he also did The World's End, I believe. That one about the dudes bar hopping while there's like an alien invasion going on,
Okay.
which is funny. It's I think it's like, oh, Simon Pegg and stuff, like a
Yeah,
bunch of
he did
British
like
guys.
Shaun of the Dead and like all of those types of movies.
Yeah, so I think Edgar Wright has this interesting way about doing his movies. Like he has a really interesting grasp on timing and delivery and cinematography. I think I actually didn't realize it until it was so blatantly in my face, like with Baby Driver, because everything is synced up to the music in that movie, and it
Hmm.
was so satisfying for me to watch.
Expertly done, right?
Absolutely.
He's so spot on with his editing and everything and the
Uh
cinematography.
huh.
I can even attest to that in his latest film, Last Night in Soho.
Oh yeah, I've seen that one too.
So the way that they sync up, the fact that I don't want to give too much away, but basically they switch off between like two actresses and kind of playing the same character, and it's so awesomely done.
It
I
is.
love
It
the
was
way
so
that
good.
they
Yeah.
edited.
Yeah, he definitely has a way of delivering these things that is so unique. And Scott Pilgrim was probably the first time that I really appreciated that.
Nice.
I really enjoyed the blending of the real life and the video game slash comic book stuff going on. When Ramona would be telling her backstory. I don't know if you noticed, but when she told her backstory, I honestly I don't remember if she did it with everyone, but I definitely noticed it when she did it with Matthew Patel that she rhymed the whole time.
I didn't catch that.
Yeah, I
That's
caught
awesome.
that today actually, and I actually rewound it to make sure that I wasn't just hearing things. And then when the art that they show when she's telling her flashback stories is the art from the comic. So that's cool.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, that's right. So when it shows the panels, right,
Yeah.
of kind of explaining her backstory,
Yeah.
yeah,
Her romances with her exes.
it's done in the style of the comics. Yeah, I noticed that too.
Another thing is sometimes, words will pop up randomly, like transitioning from one scene to the next. It'll be like Ramona come closer and then it'll be the next scene. Those are the titles of
Mm.
the chapters in the comic.
Oh, that's cool. Nice little callback.
Yep.
See, I love how he picked details from the comics and then placed them in the movie, like kind of sprinkled them
Yeah,
all
and he
throughout.
did. If I recall correctly, and I know I say that a lot in this podcast. If I recall correctly, he followed the comics pretty well.
From my understanding, it has the title of the second volume, but it more closely follows the first, right?
No, it follows the whole thing
Oh, it goes
because I
through
think
all
all the
all volumes.
7 volumes are the X or no 6 volumes I think it is, but it goes through all the X's I believe through the whole thing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think it's the whole thing.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, this movie is an ensemble cast. It has a crap ton of people in it. So I only wanted to cover the first two initially, and then as we come across more characters, then we'll talk about them.
It's like coming across them in the real movie because you're like this guy's in it and then this guy's in it.
Pretty much. So obviously we'll start with Michael Cera as the title character and main protagonist, Scott Pilgrim. He is the bassist in the indie band Sex Bob-Omb, once dated well-known singer Envy Adams, whom we'll discuss later as well, and is now infatuated with Ramona. He's also surprisingly a skillful fighter, albeit reluctant.
Right, which just comes out of nowhere.
And then Mary Elizabeth Winstead as the mysterious love interest, Ramona Flowers. She secretly moved to Toronto from New York, right?
Yes.
I guess that's not really secret.
Yeah, I just think she's one of those people that is just kind of private in general. But if you ask, it's not like she's trying to hide anything.
Sure. Another thing to to make a note of is that her hair color changes regularly for no reason,
Yes.
which is also true in the comics.
Yeah. But the comics aren't in color, so you have to I think it might be on the cover, but in the comics it has to be mentioned.
Gotcha. Okay. And lastly, she has dated some eccentric and emotionally attached people in the past. So we'll get to those obviously much
Hmm.
later. But one more thing I wanted to mention. Did you know that this movie was actually a box office Bob-Omb?
No, I didn't know that. I think I loved it so much in my head. It's just a perfect success, you know?
Exactly. I thought everyone else loved the movie as much as I did, but it wasn't able to recoup its $85 million budget,
Oh,
only making 49.
wow. Not even like a cult hit afterwards kind of thing?
It
Sales?
did. It did receive a lot of positive reviews from critics and got a cult following, but unfortunately no one really felt like they needed to go see it when it was released in theaters.
Everyone missed out then.
Yeah, they did. Back to what we were talking about before I wanted to get like full on into the movie. I just love it's like real life, but still kind of cartoonish at the same time. You know,
Yeah.
it's kind of difficult to explain, but they'll spell out sound effects, and then
Yeah.
they'll have the angles and everything are almost anime
Or
like.
if they're running, you'll have like the speed lines. We got the sound effects coming off the instruments kind of
Yeah,
thing.
it's like they start playing, and then like you can see like these like jolts coming out of it. I freaking loved all that shit.
Yeah. I think that's an Edgar Wright, touch kind of thing.
Yeah. And even just like the fact that it kind of starts off with that song, they start playing or whatever, and they're going through the different cast member names, and it's just showing like a bunch of panels and a bunch of graphics and everything, and it
Hmm.
almost just kind of felt like panels of a comic book.
It probably was. And the music, obviously, the music didn't translate in the comic because it's a comic. So I was impressed with the music that they chose and the artists that they chose to write these songs and stuff because they're really good. I really enjoyed the music in the movie.
Yeah, oh definitely. Even though a lot of the songs are just like little 10-second snippets,
Right.
some of them are actually like one note,
Yeah.
which is hilarious. So the film starts in Toronto, Canada, as we're introduced to Scott Pilgrim, the 22-year-old bassist of the unsuccessful indie band Sex Bob-Omb, of course. We're introduced to the fact that he has a new girlfriend that he just started dating, and it just so happens to be a 17-year-old high school student. So her name is Knives Chow, played by Ellen Wong.
She's so cute.
Rightfully, this relationship is looked down on.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what legal age of consent is in Canada, but in America, she's underage.
Yes.
Scandalous.
I mean, when you're an adult, age really doesn't matter as much, but when you're still in high school and you're a grown ass man, 22 years old, you can't find someone more your age.
Yeah.
But you were right though. I forgot how pretty and hilarious Ellen Wong was.
Yeah,
She's
she does a
she's
great
super
job.
cute.
Some of her, just the way she delivers things, the way her facial expressions are, and yeah, I like the way she.
She's really over dramatic
Yeah, it's cute.
about everything. I feel like it kind of annoys some of the band members, like how much she's into their band. But I mean, that's kind of what you want. You want people to be excited for you.
Yeah,
And she was almost a cheerleader, you know.
almost.
Did you know that Sex with Bomb actually gets its name from the Mario franchise? When I read about that, that was actually pretty interesting because I didn't realize that the Bob-Ombs was the name of those bombs
Oh
in
yeah,
the game.
yeah, it is true.
Bob-Omb.
Yeah, I can't. I think I actually knew that already. Go me,
Oh, you did? Wow.
nerd cred. I think anyone who probably played that game regularly when they were young knew that. But I want to say, since we never had, I guess
A Nintendo console.
yeah, so I never really got all that Mario exposure.
But bombs don't ever say their name, so how are you supposed to know what they're actually called?
Yeah, exactly.
I guess since we're talking about Sex Bomb, let's introduce the other band members. So we got Steven Stills, played by Mark Webber, who is the lead guitarist and lead vocalist, right?
Yes.
Okay. And then we have Kim Pine, played by Allison Pill, and she is the overjoyed female drummer.
Super happy. She can't contain her excitement.
Obviously, that's sarcasm. She is always just in a terrible mood.
Yep.
What's great about it is that when it comes time to play, dude, she's just always down. Like, she's just
Oh
ready to
yeah.
go at all times.
Yeah, and she's good.
I wanted to actually ask you something about Kim Pine because it seems like, Kim obviously doesn't like anyone anyway, but it seems particularly that she does not like knives. And I get the sense that Kim is still into Scott. Is that really
I
what?
don't I don't think that's what it is. They did date, and as far as I know, the breakup, the as far as I remember, like they broke up, obviously, and I feel like she's kind of felt this resentment towards him ever
Oh, okay.
since. And at the end, he apologizes to her, and she kind of smiles, and I feel like that's
Mm.
finally giving her this closure that she never had.
I don't know if they dated for a while. It seemed pretty brief, but I get the sense that he broke up with her in a way that wasn't really all that
It's probably a
savory.
jerk move. Yeah.
Yeah, he probably did it in like a really kind of like nonchalant way and didn't really care. And
Over text or something like that.
yeah, and she was probably just like, wow, what the fuck?
Yeah, and then they have to keep being in this band together.
That's
So it's
what's
not that
funny.
she hates knives; it's that she thinks Scott's an idiot.
Gotcha. Okay.
But I did want to mention, like, don't forget Neil, because he's kind of like their backup bassist, and eventually ends up taking over.
Young Neil.
Young Neil, my bad, he's not Neil yet.
His full name is Young Neil.
Yeah, and he's like the youngest person there. I mean, everyone else is 22ish, and he's 20, so that's why he's Young Neil.
Yeah, he kind of looked like a young Bill Hader. Maybe
I
if he was
mean,
like more
but
hip.
yeah, I was gonna say cuter. I don't know. Like Bill Hader's dorky.
Yeah, he is. Maybe like less nerdy and like just more
Yeah,
hipstery or something.
yeah, yeah. He had that emo hair going on, you know.
It's important to note that back then, I think the whole hipster vibe was like just coming in. So I think people were kind of considered losers that looked like hipsters.
Yeah, and then it also, I mean, if you look at the credits, or at least on IMDb, the credits, it's like, you know, we knew that, you know, Matthew Patel had his demon hipster chicks, because he literally calls them his demon hipster
Chicks, yeah.
But so many other characters in the movie are like hipster this and hipster that, you know, like, you know, all kinds of different hipsters. So, yeah, I think that was when the hipster movement was really starting to become a thing.
Yep.
And yeah, this is 2010, so it's, man, so much has changed since 2010.
I don't even remember what I was doing around that time.
Well, you would have been a little bit younger than me. Were we living together then?
Back then, I am still 2 years younger than you.
Yes. And you were still working, but you weren't in your position now. I think you were still in medical records, right? Living in that condo.
If that's
in
the case,
ghetto.
yeah. You were living in the condo at the time? We were roomies?
I know that before I got my own place, I moved in with you, and then I moved out, and then I moved in with you again. And then I moved in with Nadia, and then I got my own place.
Okay. I mean, it's just nice to have an apartment with your own laundry room.
Yeah.
That is such a big luxury, because that condo did not. It was like a little like 4-unit building, you know, and it did technically have a tiny laundry room in between the two garages, but man, that thing was so broke down. I don't think when I first moved in there with Cameron, I don't think we ever used that laundry room ever.
Wasn't it coin operated?
I think so, yeah. You open the door and everything's just right there. You're basically standing in the doorway trying to load up everything, and
oh my gosh.
so you would still be out in the elements. If it was raining outside like it was this evening, it was pissing rain before we started the podcast. Imagine that. You'd be soaked.
Yep. Couldn't do laundry on rainy days.
Anyway, that was a bit of a tangent.
I
Going
know,
back to the
little
movie. So we're also introduced to Scott's roommate, Wallace Wells, played by Kieran Culkin. What's interesting about Wallace is that, you know, I wanted to mention, because this is something that they touch on regularly throughout the movie, is that Wallace is gay, and this is pivotal to his character because he's also a bit of a I almost feel like he's kind of
A slut?
He's kind of a womanizer, but for guys.
He's a man slut.
Yeah, and he's kind of predatory and sexually aggressive at times, I noticed.
A little bit. Yeah, I don't know, he's smooth or something, I don't know, but I mean, he's not forcing anybody to do anything. He just knows how to get guys in his bed, I guess.
Apparently, because every time you see him, he has a new boyfriend.
Yeah, and the funny thing is they live in a studio and they have one bed that they share.
It's a mattress on the floor.
That's true. And so when Wallace has guys over, the three of them are in bed together. Unless Wallace says, "Hey, I need the space, you know, I need you to be gone."
What's cool about Wallace too is that he's kind of easy going, you know, like he just goes with the flow, and he's very humorous as well. Like he's sarcastic, and
he has a dry humor. He's very chill.
Mm-hmm.
He seems like a pretty good roommate.
And he puts up with a lot of Scott shit.
He sure does. I think it's interesting that this is the second movie in a row that we've done with Kieran Culkin in it.
Right? Isn't that weird? What are the chances? I totally forgot when I was watching this. I was like, holy shit, that's Kieran. And we did like a whole bit on him for our
I know.
Home Alone episode.
Yeah.
Wow. And this is obviously much later. So he went from like that nerdy Pepsi kid
Peeing the bed.
peeing the bed. They should have just written that into his character just as like a throwback. As much as Wallace is a pretty chill and kind of a cool roommate, you know, when you think about it, Scott's like the opposite. Scott's like a shitty roommate. He's like really self-centered and he doesn't contribute to anything.
Everything in the apartment is Wallace's, and they point that out literally.
Except for the jacket hanging on the hanger, which is Scott's. But they're like, Wallace, also Wallace.
Scott spends the movie, you know, figuring himself out, and
he doesn't work. He's like this aspiring musician, you know?
Yeah.
One of the things that I thought was actually kind of weird, and I actually might think is maybe the weakest part of the movie, which it's not a knock against the movie because everything else is fantastic, but Scott's dreams are a little bit odd, and I wonder if this is how they actually look in the comics, because I feel like these probably translated better in the comics. But when Scott has this dream and then he sees Ramona kind of like skating through and she's just like, what's up? The audience is kind of left like, what the fuck was that?
Yeah. Apparently Scott has these dreams, and his brain, I think she actually mentions in the movie, like his brain happens to have a pretty good pathway through time, basically. So she says she could get, you know, she could get through a mile in, you know, like, you know, however long she's a couple minutes or something like that,
just skating.
And so and so she uses the passageway through
his
like
mind.
Scott's subconscious to deliver Amazon packages in a timely fashion,
which is pretty awesome. Imagine if people could really do shit like that. So yeah, Ramona is introduced through the dream as she's passing through her interdimensional highway, delivering packages. I also wanted to take a quick second to mention the other Scott scene was hilarious.
Which scene is that?
Where Kieran, he's just like, Scott, and then so Scott Pilgrim snaps up. He's like, what? And he's like, no, the other Scott. And then so his boyfriend sits up.
Yeah.
And his name is literally just like other Scott.
Yeah, Wallace's boyfriend.
So while Scott and Knives are hanging out, they visit, they're going on a bunch of dates, and they're going to like music stores, and they're going to like arcades and stuff. But when they're in the music store, they're introduced to Julie Powers, who is played by Aubrey Plaza.
Aubrey Plaza, another big name, and I think like nerd famous at the time, you know?
Oh, was she?
I feel like she was always doing these nerdy roles, and like guys, you know, nerdy guys are super into her.
Huh. I don't think I knew who she was at that time. So Aubrey Plaza, is she an employee at the record store, or is she just kind of shopping there?
I feel like she's kind of everywhere because she's also a barista at the coffee shop.
That's right. So that's the joke, is that she literally every scene that she's in, she's working. So she has like a shit ton of jobs.
And she also seems to be working the venue when the Clash at Demon Head are there, you know, and where else? Oh, and then she throws a party, so I guess she's not technically working then, but she's like hosting something.
Right. Is she a friend of Scott, or is she just kind of like, I don't know, an acquaintance or something? Because it seems like she sees Scott and Knives hanging out on their date, and then she's almost like judging them, right? Like she's just like,
and he obviously knows her, but it might be through his sister. But yeah, she's totally judging him, and he's like, "Thank you, Julie." I like how the place Scott grew up at is right across the street from his apartment.
Exactly. So Knives wants to check out the place. The apartment, and so Scott, he doesn't want to invite her inside, but he's like, hey, you know what, here's an idea, I'll show you where I grew up. And so she's like, cool. And then they
turn around,
they walk like 2 steps, and it's like across the street is where he grew up.
He's like, here it is. And she's like, whoa.
He kind of reminds me of me in that respect, where when I moved out of mom and dad's, I only moved like
down the street,
10 minutes away driving.
Not even 10 minutes away, like 5 minutes away, like 3 miles.
Definitely not very far. And I mean, which made it convenient for doing laundry.
Oh yeah, especially since you didn't have the coins to do that.
You know, it was nice though, because I was like 2 minutes away from work, so it was the optimal point. I was like halfway between work and mom and dad's.
Yeah, when you worked over there. I remember when Mervin's shut down and it became Kohl's, I was like, oh no. And then I walked into Kohl's and I was like, oh, it's exactly the same. All right.
More of the same.
Yeah.
I still think that I was part of Mervin's downfall because Skylar and I we shoplifted a couple times.
I don't think you shoplifting once or twice from Mervin's was part of its downfall.
That was the straw that broke the camel's back. I'm telling you. Speaking of Scott's apartment, why the hell does it look like a bunker?
Right? I was wondering that too. I don't know. Is that a Canada thing? Is any Canadian listeners out there? Let us know. Is that a Canadian thing? For I don't know, maybe because they get heavy snow or something. So maybe it's part of that. I don't know.
Oh, true. The snow was like right up against their door, so yeah, maybe that helped kind of conceal it a little bit. Man, that would suck. Like you open your door and it's just 3 feet of snow immediately right there.
Yeah, that sounds great. I'm so glad we live in California.
When does Scott actually run into Ramona outside of his dream?
He sees her at the library, right?
The library. Okay, so that's another date that Scott's on with Knives.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and he's with Knives, and then that's when he realizes that the girl in his dream is real.
Not a figment of his imagination. But he is really intrigued by who that was, right? Like he wants to.
Yeah, it's interesting because she's in his dream, and he's like, she's literally the girl of my dreams.
Yeah, literally.
And then he kind of becomes obsessed with her a little bit, and as soon as he figures out that she's a real person, not just a figment of his imagination, he fixates on finding out more about her. So he ends up at that party that Julie's throwing that I mentioned. And he's asking around like, oh, do you know this girl? And he holds up this drawing, and it's like this shit ass like little kid looking drawing. And his friend's like, oh yeah, that's Ramona Flowers.
That's so funny. Fun fact about that scene, he was originally supposed to hold up a panel of
the
Ramona
comic?
From the comic. Yeah,
that would have been funny. But the kid picture was funny too.
Yeah, Edgar Wright thought that it was just way funnier to actually have like the shitty kids drawing.
And then they know exactly who it was supposed to be.
Yeah. Super poorly drawn illustration. Like it's basically just like a circle with like dot and eyes with like blue hair or something.
So his friend Como, who plays him,
Como,
he's supposed to know everybody who's anybody, basically.
Anyone who's anyone, he knows.
Como knows, yeah.
And so he's the one that reveals that Ramona just moved up from New York and is dating some random guy named Gideon, and that's all that he knows. But he actually just totally skips over the Gideon part, and he's just like, oh, so her name is Ramona and she moved up from New York. Cool. Good to know.
Something that was interesting to me, I think it's another jerk move of Scott's, of course, but the way he just immediately loses interest in Knives and just totally blows her off. I've actually totally had that happen to me before.
To
so
you?
I can not like to me, but like where I would lose interest in somebody quickly like that,
Oh crap, what happened? Are you
I don't exactly remember. It's probably I was fickle like Scott in high school, so I recognize that as a jerk move, but at the same time, I'm like, yeah, I can relate. Poor Knives, but I can relate.
Steph, do you remember Lamont?
I still remember his phone number.
What the hell?
Because it was just a bunch of 8s. I think it was I literally just hit 8 for a while, and that was his phone number.
And then he answers, is like, Steph, is that you?
Right?
I'm still waiting.
For anyone who's wondering who that is, there was this guy who was for some reason obsessed with me in elementary school. I want to say like 2nd grade or something ridiculous like that. I wonder what he's doing out there.
I don't think he had a last name. It's just Lamont, period. Oh man. Also, how badass of a name is The Clash at Demon Head? That just sounds awesome.
That's pretty good, yeah.
It's pretty legit. So I was looking into what that was, like how they came up with that title, and that is actually the name of a video game as well. It's this old retro game, and I don't remember what console it's on. I want to say maybe like Atari or something, but yeah, it's
something super old. Yeah,
it got the name from that video game, Clash at Demon Head.
That's cool.
Also, this might be the first time that I had ever seen Brie Larson on screen.
Really? Yeah, me too.
She blew up after this. If she wasn't already popular, she could have been, and I wouldn't have known. But I felt like given a couple years after this movie, and then she just started popping up a bunch of stuff.
Really? I feel like she. Oh, I didn't really see her again until Captain Marvel.
What really put her on the map was Room.
Yeah, I've never seen that.
I've still yet to see it myself, but Brenda saw it, and she said it was pretty awesome.
Room?
Yeah, Room. Not to be confused with The Room, which is a
Yeah.
much different movie. What a story, Mark.
Did we mention that Scott's sister?
Oh, no, who's Scott's sister?
Scott's sister, played by Anna Kendrick.
She's a fun cameo because she just pops up randomly throughout the movie. What I like about the relationship, too, she's the younger sister, and she's actually kind of protective, overly protective of Scott.
Some younger siblings can be, yeah.
Oh man, at the first competition, like the first band competition,
What was the Toronto International Battle of the Bands?
she sees Knives and she sees Lamont, so she's like, "So what's your guys' story?"
I know. And that night she loses her boyfriend to Wallace, and she's like, again?
That was great because again, this is Wallace just like getting guys like there's no tomorrow.
He just like makes eyes at him, and by the end of the night, they're making out.
Yeah. Anna Kendrick's always fun to kind of see in movies because I feel like she always just has presence in whatever role she has. Even in the Twilight movies, she's this like insignificant side character, but I think she's one of the more charismatic ones.
True.
Was this before or after Twilight?
This is after Twilight.
So there are a lot of pop culture references obviously throughout the movie and little Easter eggs and shit thrown in. So it would be like impossible for us to mention all of them, but another one that is pretty interesting is Crush and the Boys. If I recall, that's also named after a video game. So it seems like all the bands,
all the bands are video game
related. Yeah,
that's funny. I didn't even realize that. Well, I learned something new today. So speaking of Crush and the Boys, I love that Wallace starts heckling him immediately when they go on stage.
What does he say?
He's like, is your drummer one of the boys or whatever? And then she gives him the finger, and she's like this like elementary school girl.
That's right. So Kim's hating hard on the band because they have a female drummer.
They have a girl drummer. Yeah, it's funny because when sex Bob-Ombs go on, that girl drummer is giving death glare from
back at her. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And now enter Matthew Patel, Evil X #1.
Matthew Patel, Evil X #1. And he had actually sent Scott an email in advance, which Scott basically disregarded.
Much like his selective hearing, he has selective reading as well.
Right. So Matthew Patel shows up and he's like, who the hell are you? And Matthew Patel's like, didn't you read my email? It explains everything.
Yeah.
And he's like, skimmed it.
You will pay for your insolence. What I loved about this was how just over the top and dramatic Matthew was, because he's like just super ultra serious.
Yeah, and stereotypical too in some ways. He's like wearing eyeliner, and I like how someone was like, why are you dressed as a pirate? He's like, pirates are in right now, which was true.
Pirates are in this year? Man, I remember when Pirates of the Caribbean came out. Dude, it was insane how popular pirates were.
Yeah, I spent one whole night one time making a fan site for that movie.
Oh, did you?
I did. I don't know whatever happened to it because I just abandoned it. But
on Angel Fire?
Awesome. I'm pretty sure it was on Angel Fire.
Oh, that's awesome. With like all the graphics and flashing lights and
flashing things and yeah.
This is a pretty intense fight, so we can't skip over this because this is the first time that he actually fights an ex-boyfriend, and there's like a lot of...
It's also the first time you find out that Scott can fight. Spontaneously out of nowhere.
And there's a lot of elements to this, so it's like he flies in, he just busts through the wall, and he's demanding to fight Scott, and Scott doesn't want to fight. He's just like, that's where you're talking about, what do I do?
He's like, what do I do?
It's funny because every time Scott fights someone, it does like the versus, like a fighting game. But it doesn't even do that until like halfway in the fight.
Yeah, because I don't think he hardly even realizes he's fighting at first. But I think it's funny because they pause at some point and Scott's like, what's going on? And then Ramona goes through the backstory.
Yeah.
And then she mentions something about his mystical powers. And Scott's like, wait, what? Mystical powers? And that's when he starts shooting fireballs and making demon hipster chicks or whatever.
I also didn't get the joke about the pirates because I didn't think he looked like a pirate at all, honestly.
I didn't either. I mean, he was wearing a striped shirt and a jacket, I guess, with this, maybe the eyeliner, that Jack Sparrow eyeliner.
I thought it was the pants and the shoes,
and
honestly.
Boots.
Yeah, like tucked into the boots. But I thought easily this was like the cheesiest of all the boyfriends. It was,
especially with the
kind of cringe.
The song, yeah.
The singing, yeah. And I'm just like, could have done without that, but that's part of the comics, and that's actually in the game. I remember that.
I don't think, because I mean, there's no singing in the comics, so I don't recall there being a song in the comics.
He doesn't dance around though or anything?
I think he does. And then the whole like the demon hipster chicks and thing,
Right,
and that
right.
stuff happens. And
But yeah, I definitely think it was the other weak part of this entire movie, but everything else
yeah,
is fantastic. I was a little disappointed with how he defeated him because he's shooting everything with his mystical powers, and he actually incinerates Crash and the boys.
Crashing the boys.
Scott just throws a symbol at his head, and then he like punches him in the face, and then that's it. He KOs him.
I mean, he was only a $2.40 X, so.
But there was a point where he was like doing like a high combo, right? Getting all these shots in on him, and that wasn't enough to KO him. But it was just like a symbol to the head.
I guess
boom.
the symbol and the punch were just the finish him part of it.
Maybe also when he summoned his hipster girlfriends or whatever, his hipster chicks.
Yeah.
He was more vulnerable then to like a physical attack.
Right.
After that fight, Ramona actually reveals that she has more exes, but Scott still doesn't seem to care about that. He's like, whatever.
It does not register for a really long time.
She mentions it like 3 or 4 times.
Several times, and then he always, at some point, he's like ex-boyfriends, and she's like exes.
Did you notice that Scott seems to change his shirt about as often as Ramona changes her hair color? Like, he changes it like 3 or 4 times throughout the movie.
And I think one time the symbol is the rock band bass symbol, isn't it? And then he has the Scott Pilgrim symbol of the last shirt at the end. It's like the heart with SP in it.
Oh, I didn't even notice that. That's what it was. Yeah. Okay.
So I noticed a couple of them.
Scott finally breaks up with Knives so he can focus solely on Ramona, and Scott seems to be on cloud 9 now that he can actually just free himself of Knives. Obviously, Knives is like, she's like hating her life now.
I think it's interesting because when he was riding the bus, he was just sitting on the bus like, being sad and stuff, and he imagines her sad face when he broke up with her, and then imagines her sad face again, and then he starts imagining Ramona and perks up.
Damn. He's like, oh yeah, anyway.
Yeah, pretty much.
When Scott and Ramona have their first official date at his pad, he initially tells Wallace to fuck off for a while, but then he kind of gets self-conscious, just being alone with Ramona.
Yeah, and he's a little awkward, and this scene actually has one of Andrew's and my favorite lines.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, because when they're eating and then they're talking, and he's like, I could just eat garlic bread all the time. And then she's like, but you would get fat. And he's like, why? And she's like, bread makes you fat. And he's like, bread makes you fat?
Bread makes you fat? Yeah, with his mouth full.
And so we always say that, he like, one of us will be like, bread makes you fat. And the other will be like, bread makes you fat? For, 13 years now.
I'm not going to lie, though. Garlic bread is pretty amazing.
Yeah, it is. I could eat that all the time. Just nonstop.
So yeah, when he rushes Wallace out the door, Wallace just kind of mentions in passing, he's like, I'll be at the castle. But it's like, you don't know what the castle is, Like, you're just like, okay, whatever. It's like quite literally a castle. But yeah, I like how he does that too, because again, this is just the genius of Edgar Wright, where it's like the transitions and how he delivers the information. So he's like, Lucas, he's a pretty good skater turned pretty good actor. Well, so the cover of it is like Lucas as a skater, and then like when he flips it, it's like a poster for his movie that's coming out. I thought it was pretty awesome.
That was good. And then he throws it down with all the other newspapers showing all his movies.
Mm-hmm. Why is Scott so self-conscious about his hair specifically? Because I felt like that was what really sent him over the edge, and he was like, all right, I gotta get out of here. Let's go. Because
the day that Envy broke up with him, he had gotten a haircut. And so it says like at some point, like, oh, it's been 400 and something days since he's gotten a haircut. He's been cutting his hair himself ever since.
Since he broke up with Envy. Wow.
Since she broke up with him. Yeah.
Okay.
And it was a bad haircut on top of that. He got a bad haircut. Then he got dumped.
I didn't really notice that it was supposed to be a bad haircut because that just kind of looks like Michael Cera's hair all the time anyway.
Yeah, well, no, that's after it's been growing out and he's been cutting it himself for, 400 and however many days. But
it's supposed to be kind of shitty, right?
Like, it's supposed to be shaggy, but like it has a drawing of him from the comic with the bad haircut, and it's all like different lengths and stuff.
Oh, okay.
That was when he got the bad haircut that got him dumped.
Gotcha.
Not actually got him dumped, but he coincidentally got dumped the same
day.
Time.
So that he just associates that with a very painful time.
He refuses to go get his hair professionally cut because it's triggering for him.
And then just the slightest mention of it's like, oh, your hair's getting a little shaggy. He's just like, what?
The hat's already on.
I love how they do that. So yeah, he gets nervous after she mentions the hair, and then so he's just like, oh, let's go hang out with Wallace, see if we can find
He's
him at
like,
the
let's go
castle.
take a walk. And she's like, are you trying to leave just so you can keep your hat on? Yes, that was the purpose. But they end up going to the castle to meet up with Wallace, and they're at the film shoot.
We introduce Evil X number 2, Lucas Lee, played by Chris Evans.
Yes. And Ramona's like, what's going on here? And when she finds out who's filming, she's like, oh no, we gotta go. And that's when Lucas Lee starts actually talking to Scott.
This is a fun dynamic because Scott is so starstruck by Lucas. He's like excited to meet him, and Lucas is like, I'm gonna kick your ass.
And he's like, can I have your autograph? I love when he walks out of the trailer and it's like the Universal theme music.
Dun, 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 dun.
And he cracks his neck. It's all dun dun.
As far as I can tell, this seems like the perfect casting for Lucas Lee.
Yeah. And I think at that point I was like, oh, look, it's the Human Torch.
Oh, that's true, yeah. Because, this was way before Avengers and Captain America, so...
a couple years, few years.
That voice that he does, the fucking eyebrows, and just his mannerisms.
That stupid facial hair. Yeah, it's great.
Oh, yeah, he has, like, the little chin strap thing.
Yeah. That was stupid looking shit. Like,
it's so great, and
perfect.
Man, this shows the humor and like delivery that Chris Evans is capable of doing. I might say that this is actually one of my favorite villains of the movie.
Yeah,
he was just so fun to watch. I loved almost everything about just the dynamic of this fight, because you get the sense that Scott just is not on the same level as Lucas Lee. Like, in a straight up fight, if he tried to approach Lucas the same way that he did Matthew Patel, he was going to get his ass kicked, because Lucas was just like bigger, stronger, and just like a better fighter.
And he does get his ass kicked for a while. I mean, he sicks all his stunt doubles on him and stuff like that. And
well, the thing is, so the brief moment where they kind of go one-on-one, he easily just takes him out. But like when Scott gets up and tries to retaliate, that's when you're introduced to the stunt doubles, and they're playing off of the character. His current role is that he's an actor. He's like this huge action star, and so I love how they're kind of like playing up that trope. What do action stars typically have? Stunt doubles. Lucas is literally just walking away right after knocking him on his ass, and so Scott tries to grab his shoulder and turn him around, and then it's revealed that it's like one of his stunt doubles, and the camera pans over to the side, and Lucas is like, whoa, looks like you see double.
So cheesy.
All these other stunt doubles fan out from like behind that initial stunt double.
Yeah.
And so there's like a good like 8 or 9 of them. So
You're
awesome.
Just fighting a whole team of stunt doubles.
They're all wielding skateboards.
Yeah, and they're hitting him with the skateboards and stuff.
I freaking loved this fight. Like, everything about this fight.
I love the way he actually ends up being able to defeat him, because he just kind of plays on his ego.
He kind of just used his need to impress girls against him.
Yeah, because he's like, there's girls. He's like, he wasn't going to do it. And he's like, but there are girls watching.
But the thing is, he didn't even know what it is he was trying to get him to do. He was like, can you do a thingy?
He's like, it's called a grind.
Called a grind, bro.
Grindy thingy? And then when he explodes at the bottom of the stairs, I love how the director's like, that's a wrap.
Yeah, exactly. He was going down that rail at like 300 kilometers an hour, right? Since it's in Canada.
Yeah. Yeah.
He straight up just like hits the ground and like explodes at the very bottom. It's awesome.
You just see a little explosion of coins at the bottom.
The only way for Scott to defeat Lucas is to have Lucas defeat himself.
That's right. So then after that, we that's when he gets the call from Envy at some point. And she already knows who Ramona is. Well, I guess that would make sense, because you find out later that she dated Envy's current boyfriend.
Is she kind of stalking, like almost like low-key lurking on Scott though? Like kind of keeping tabs on him, seeing what's going on with him?
I mean, I think it's one of those things where she doesn't want him, but she doesn't want anybody else to have him either, you know?
Trying to make her more of a bitch, but I mean, again, I don't feel bad for Scott because he's an asshole, so they kind of deserve each other.
Right. But she ends up inviting the band, not him specifically, but she invites the band to open for them.
Yep.
They play the Clash song, which is really good. I really like that song.
That is a dope song. So this is the introduction to the Clash at Demon Head, right? And I think they wanted to show that the bands that Scott has been kind of playing against so far, they're all these like little small indie bands, but the Clash at Demon Head is on another level.
Yeah.
and they're legit. So when you go see them perform, they have like all the production and everything that goes into it, and this is cool because this is really Brie Larson singing.
Yeah, that is cool too. Written and performed by Brie Larson and Metric. It's by Metric.
Metric, okay. So yeah, she actually sings, and I found out when I was researching this movie that she was actually trying to be a musician first, and then she got into acting later.
Oh, no way.
So that's why she wasn't
she
afraid
can
to
actually
sing
sing.
the song.
Yeah, that's cool. So then Julie comes out because she's apparently working everywhere, and she's like, Envy would like you guys all to come backstage. And they're like, all of us? And she's like, did I fucking stutter? Except it wasn't that sounding.
Scott got almost jumped on his way to the venue though, right? Wasn't that when he first runs into Roxy?
He was just walking down an alleyway, and then Roxy's like flashing back and forth.
Kind of just looks like a ghost or something flying around.
Yeah, and then he punches her in the boob to stop her. That's when he finds out it's a girl, and she's like, "You punched me in the boob. Prepare to die, obviously." And that's my favorite line in the movie.
This character probably has like a lot of the best lines in the movie, honestly. Like everything she says is idiotic.
Yeah, it's hilarious. Played by Mae Whitman, who, if you ever watched Arrested Development with also Michael Cera, she was Michael Cera's girlfriend in that show. And it's funny because her character is in the show is supposed to be like super duper forgettable and just plain, and I can't even remember what her name is because she's so forgettable. But completely opposite character, I guess.
I feel like Mae Whitman is just she's a surprisingly pretty funny actress, you know?
Yeah.
I feel like her style of humor is her trying to be serious, but like that comes off dorky or whatever, or like idiotic, like this character. So it's important to note that he finds out after punching her in the boob that she's a girl because Scott doesn't want to fight a girl. So that's why he has no bone to pick with her at all. And that becomes a thing later. Back to Julie. So she invites the band backstage.
Yeah, and that's where Knives finds out that Scott actually dated Envy, and that's where you also find out Envy's current boyfriend is Ramona's ex.
Damn. What was cool about this character too was when he was performing, he's kind of like mad dogging in Scott's direction, but you don't realize that he is one of the evil exes, so that's why he's burning a hole through Scott while he's performing.
Yep, and this guy Todd
Ingram,
is played by Superman himself, one of the Supermans himself,
Brandon Routh. He's actually kind of, I don't know, he's kind of like Superman in this movie too, if you think about it.
Yeah, he has these powers because he's vegan, which is hilarious. So apparently being vegan gives you powers, psychic powers.
They make fun of vegans by basically
making them all powerful,
making it satirical, and they're just saying that if all vegans are pretty much just like gifted these like powers and they think that they're better than everyone and no one is on their level.
Yeah. And so it seems like it's going to be impossible to beat him.
If Scott couldn't go one-on-one with Lucas Lee, he has even less of a chance against Todd. Because Todd's like a Super Saiyan.
Yeah, literally. Like his hair's even up and everything.
That's another cool character trait for Todd is when he's normal, he just has like this like, kind of like emo hair in the face or whatever. But when he uses his powers, his eyes turn white. It's almost like Last Airbender.
Mm-hmm. Pure. Superior.
This is where Todd does a heinous thing because Knives is there, and you see that she dyed her hair blue to compete with Ramona,
whose hair is also blue at the time.
Yeah, she has blue hair around this time, so Knives only dyes like half of her hair, so she's only half committed. But she actually defends Scott, so you know she's still in love with Scott, and they're kind of like dogging on Scott, so Knives comes to his defense. I think by this point, Envy is tired of Knives, so she's just like, take this girl out. And Todd just, boom, punches her right in the face.
Literally punches the blue out of her hair. It's all splattered on the floor.
And Neil even mentions it, right?
Twice. He's like, you punched the highlights out of her hair.
And that was actually in the comics.
Yeah.
Now, fight number 3 commences. So Scott tries to come to her defense after that punch, you know, that cheap shot. Todd... this is where you see that, oh man, he has like supernatural powers, holding Scott in the air, you know, like levitating him off the ground as he's standing up. I think he's like
force choking him too, because Scott's like, my neck.
Oh, is he? He's like
Yeah.
choking him too. He's basically just like tossing him around at will, and Scott
Mm-hmm.
has like no chance. So what's cool about this fight specifically is that he tries a couple different methods out. Since he can't go one-on-one with them, what does he do? Bass battle.
Yeah.
So when he gets tossed through the wall, Scott grabs a bass guitar and he actually starts trying to challenge Todd to a bass off. And Todd just kicks his ass in that too. Todd's just too good. Like nothing can stop this guy. He's an invincible vegan. Until
Scott tricks him into drinking half and half.
is it reverse psychology or is it reverse psychology?
Reverse for sure. But the thing is, you find out that was his third offense. He knowingly ingested gelato and chicken, and he's like, gelato's not vegan. What was it? Milk and eggs, bitch, or something.
You have to mention the fact that as soon as he makes his third offense, the vegan police show up
Immediately, and then they're like, you ate, whatever it was with chicken in it, and he's like, chicken's not vegan.
He says all like hesitant, like chicken's not vegan.
So funny.
And then what do? They like de-veganize him with their finger guns.
Yeah.
So yeah, they strip him of his powers, and then by that point, as like a sad regular human,
his hair falls flat.
Yeah, it's all flat. It's not cool looking anymore. First he was vegan, now you will be gone.
Be gone.
That's
he's
stupid
like,
line.
And then he gets
he like headbutts him,
exploded.
Right?
Yeah, he headbutts him into coins.
That sounded like a line that like Roxy would say.
Obviously purposely done, but hilarious.
Yeah. Shout out to Thomas Jane. He was one of the vegan police.
Yeah.
So now I feel like around this time, Scott is getting a little bit more... Right? Yeah, he's getting more serious about the exes. He wants to know more about them. I think that's when he asked her for the list of exes.
It was actually after Roxy that he asked for the list. Because after Roxy, he's like... Yeah. He's like, how many more do I have? And
he's still talking about boyfriends, and she keeps correcting him. She's like, exes. Yeah. And he's like, ex-boyfriends, exes. Why do you keep saying that? And then as soon as he says that, she shows up and like kicks him like right in the back of the head or something, like the side of the head.
I remember they have this little exchange, and then in his head the dial goes from like not getting it to finally getting it.
I like how they did a couple different things. So they had like the little spinny wheel thing. It was gonna like choose his response to the question,
right?
And then yeah, that one was like a little meter.
He was gonna say like I have to go, I have to pee or something, and somehow it became I have to pee. I want to pee on her or something like that.
It just gets all jumbled up. So yeah, Roxy Richter, she's the only girlfriend of Ramona, and you find out that she was just a college fling.
Yeah, so she said she was a little bi-curious, and then Roxy says, well, I'm a little bi-furious. And then she calls her a has-been, like a lesbian and a has-been.
Roxy starts off and she's there to kick Scott's ass and she's angry at him. But then right after Ramona calls Roxy just a fling, that's when I think Roxy gets offended and she sets her targets on Ramona. So now this is an interesting one because it's like girl versus girl. And this is a pretty badass fight.
Roxy busts out her little belt whip thing, and then Ramona pulls that giant hammer out of her tiny little crossbody bag.
I feel like it didn't start off as Scott versus Roxy because Scott had no intention of ever fighting her. So he didn't even think that like that was even going to be one of the stipulations.
And then Roxy was like, sorry, but your precious Scott has to fight me himself. He's like, I can't hit a girl, and Ramona's like, you don't have a choice. And so that's when she kind of like starts puppeteering him.
I thought this was actually pretty cool and like well choreographed fight scene.
Yeah.
Because how complicated is this fight scene? It's like you got someone that's like just limp. She's like controlling him by the wrists and like she's like kicking his legs out to like kick Roxy.
I thought it was really cool.
Fight your own battles, you lazy ass.
Yeah. And the way, how does he defeat this one?
She eventually uses her speed to like separate the two. With Scott singled out, she's actually going to get the final blow on him. But Ramona reveals that Roxy has a weakness. She has an Achilles heel, which is actually more of like an Achilles knee pit. If you touch her in the back of her knee, then she basically has an uncontrollable orgasm. So I think he like turns away and he like holds his finger out and like barely grazes her knee.
Well, she's bringing her foot down to kick him,
The coup de
And
grace.
he just puts his finger up.
And so he touches her just in time at the back of the leg, and she has such an intense orgasm that she kills herself.
So weird. She orgasms to death.
Oh man, yeah. That's what I thought was so refreshing about all these X's, is that the dynamic in which all the fights happen, they're all different. You know, it's not like he just does the same shit over and over to each of the X's. So they all have a certain weakness that he has to exploit.
Yeah, that's true. So that's when he asks for the list. He's drunk, he's pissed, and he's getting frustrated about having to fight all these random people that keep coming after him.
Mm-hmm.
He starts saying some mean things to Ramona because he's a jerk.
And she breaks
and
up
then
with
he
him.
asks for a list. No, I don't think she breaks up with him, but she's like, I'm gonna go, and here's your stupid list.
Okay. Don't they also reveal that when she gives her number to Scott, she actually hinted that she has evil X's, because she has like 7 marks.
X's.
Yeah, I thought that was actually pretty cool, like foreshadowing. But yeah, I feel like my favorite X's probably Lucas, Todd, and Roxy. I do feel like it kind of slows down a bit after the Roxy fight, in my opinion.
I do. Honestly, I mean, he has to fight the twins at the same time, and the way they do it is actually part of the battle of the bands, right?
Right.
And so these twins are the Katayanagi twins. They're DJs, I guess.
I think so, yeah. The dynamic of this fight is that Scott, along with the rest of Sex Bob-Omb, have to defeat the twins. So these are Evil X's number 5 and 6.
Mm-hmm. And so they start playing, and their music, I don't know, turns into these dragon monsters.
Mm-hmm. Like a little spirit, almost.
Sound dragon spirit monsters. And at first they get knocked back, but they're like, no, we have to win. That's when Scott finds out that Gideon's in the audience with Ramona, and he's like, no, we got to beat them. And so they get back up, and they start playing, and they create this music gorilla monster. So they have the giant monsters, sound monsters, fighting over the audience in the middle, between the two stages. And I thought that was really cool.
Cool visual, for sure.
Yeah.
And also with the Gideon part, they kind of refer to him as G-Man for most of the movie. So that this is where Scott finally puts 2 and 2 together, and he's like, G-Man is Gideon, which is Ramona's current boyfriend or whatever, or like her latest boyfriend.
The latest ex, the one that she left New York for.
Mm-hmm. That's when he's just like, oh hell no, yeah, we definitely have to win this.
Yeah,
this is almost like a kaiju battle.
Exactly.
Imagine if that was actually happening at the concert, like there's some sort of laser show and you got like these monsters, like these titans fighting.
That'd be great. That would be freaking great. So they win, which is awesome. And Ramona leaves with Gideon. Wallace is trying to tell him before that he needs to step it up, and if he's in love with her, tell her he's in love with her. Wallace is like, the L word? Or say tell her to use the L word, and he's like, lesbian? No, the other L word. Lesbian?
Dude, Scott's such an idiot.
I know, Scott's so dumb. So he goes to Ramona, and that's when he finally tells her, I'm in lesbians with you.
Yeah.
And she's like, we need to break up, which is, obviously a repeat of what he did to Knives.
Damn.
And she keeps saying, like, I can't help myself around Gideon. He's in my head,
But you don't understand why.
Yeah, exactly. And so Gideon comes around and he's like, I'm not such a bad guy. Here's a record deal. And Steven proceeds to pee himself and sign the contract.
Dude, he sells out immediately, like no hesitation at all.
No hesitation at all.
Scott, he's just like, no, we're not going to do this. And so he's like, I'm leaving the band if you guys are signing up. And they're like, cool. Young Neil just steps in. He's like, I can play bass. And they all sign together. Well,
I mean, at least Scott was kind of cool about it. Like, he's like, if this is what you guys want to do, I don't want to be a part of it, but you guys do what you want, kind of thing.
Yeah. So now, in an effort to win Ramona back, Scott storms the theater, not the castle. Yeah. He storms the theater, the Chaos Theater.
It was his club.
Yeah. Guessing the right passwords just randomly.
What's the first password? Whatever.
What's the second password? Cool.
Cool.
So now we get to Evil X number 7, Gideon Graves, played by Jason Schwartzman. He kind of has like this like douchiness to him as well.
Definitely. And I love Jason Schwartzman. He's in so much stuff, and I see him freaking everywhere.
Yeah.
Playing all kinds of different characters. So
This is probably one of the coolest characters he's played. This like arrogant, kind of egotistical person, but he's also someone that can back it up.
Yeah.
So who would have thought that you would ever see Michael Cera in like a badass fight scene, you know? Much less like
Yeah.
all throughout this movie. I wonder if he actually had to train martial arts or something for this
He
movie.
probably had a team of stunt doubles.
Probably, yeah. But I imagine like for the front shots, you know, he probably had to learn how to like punch and kick.
They
and
probably
stuff.
all did. I mean, Ramona's badass too, you know. So that must have been real fun to shoot. You know? Must have been a fun movie.
As Scott is trying to challenge Gideon to a fight, he actually has to get through some goons, but this is where he reveals that he is in love with Ramona, and he unlocks the power of love sword out of his chest, which is a total game trope.
Yeah. Oh, you know what? We forgot to mention when he got the extra life. I don't actually remember when the heck it is that he gets the extra
That
life.
was after the twins fight. So after he defeats them.
He defeated them at the same time or
something? It was like such a high score that he got a 1-up, and so he got his extra life. I like how he grabs it out of the air like it's a tangible item.
Yep.
And it has his face from like the comics.
It actually kind of reminds me a little bit of Ready Player One, which obviously came way after that.
Yeah. After Scott gets the power of love sword, which is like a red sword, right? Or a pink sword. So he starts ripping through all the goons, all of Gideon's goons with it, and it kind of reminded me of like Kill Bill, where you know she's taking out like hundreds of guys. And so yeah, he gets through them, and then eventually he gets to fight Gideon. So Gideon and Scott are kind of going at it, and at some point the sword gets destroyed, right? Like it gets knocked out of his hands and like shatters.
Is that before or after Knives shows up?
It seems like she's gonna fight Gideon, but then she turns her attention to Ramona.
Yeah, and so they're fighting in the background while Scott and Gideon are fighting in the foreground. And so you got this double fight going on, which is cool.
That's what happens. So Scott takes his attention off of Gideon. Like I think he almost has him beat, but he wants to break up the girls fight because he feels bad about that. And then Gideon gets that cheap shot.
Yeah, because Knives is like, you know, you stole him, and then you know, Ramona's like, I didn't steal anybody. Like, what are you talking about?
It was such a shitty explanation because he's like, I didn't cheat on both of you. I only cheated on Knives.
And she's like, what's the difference? And Ramona's like, what's the difference? And he's like, you weren't wronged. And then that's when Gideon stabs him from behind.
Yeah, gets that cheap shot. That was a killing blow, and Scott is sent to his purgatory, which apparently seems to be his mind, his desert mind. But yeah, since Ramona had been through his mind before with her highway, she's able to go back, and she almost like convince him to keep fighting, you know?
Yeah.
Emotionally, he's done. He's like, what's the point of fighting, you know? I won't be able to win. And so she gives him almost like a morale boost and hypes him back up. And he forgets about his 1-up and up until then. So yeah, he ends up using his extra life. I was a little confused with the extra life though, because I felt like, why did he start so far back?
Yeah, I didn't know why he started so far back either.
I almost felt like he should have just started right where he died.
Yeah.
In a video game kind of trope, maybe he started from his last save, which was like all the way before he went to Chaos Theater.
Yeah, that's true.
This time when he is asked for the passwords, he just fucking wrecks everyone.
Yeah, it's hilarious.
He ain't got time for that shit.
And then he shows up and he's like, he apologizes to Kim, and he promotes young Neil to Neil.
That's right.
And you know, he tells them that they're better off without him, and that Neil sounds great, and he's a good addition to the band. And so Gideon's like, you want to fight me for her? And he's like, no, I want to fight you for me.
For me.
And he gets the sword of self-respect.
So the sword of self-respect. Oh man, that was awesome. It turns out that you can also get a different kind of weapon.
Yeah.
Which seems equally as strong. Like I feel like the one wasn't really stronger than the other.
Yeah, I agree.
So he has to go through the goons again with that. But now he gets to fight Gideon. You know, since he actually told the truth to Knives and Ramona, he just like flat out confesses. He's like, listen, I'm a piece of shit and I cheated on both of you. Yeah. And I'm sorry for that. And so she is like, you know what? Whatever. It's water under the bridge. And so they both do like a 2-on-1 against Gideon.
Yeah. I feel like people have such a strong need for closure when something ends. And, this is where Knives got a little bit of hers, I guess, or...
Yeah. This time around, instead of Scott kind of going 1-on-1 and them being evenly matched, they just fucking wreck Gideon. They beat his ass, and they're doing like double
back
team
and
moves.
forth, just, nonstop. This is where he's all glitching out and stuff.
It's almost, again, going back to Twilight, it's almost like when a vampire's about to die and they crack, like a porcelain doll almost.
Yeah.
1 HP at this point. He's getting the flashing red in his health
and
bar.
His glitchy rant, it's so good too.
Doesn't he also complain about swallowing his gum too?
Yeah, you made me swallow my gum. It's gonna be in my digestive tract for 7 years. Which is totally a myth, by the way. You poop it out like anything else.
So yeah, they eventually get the final blow and KO Gideon Graves, and he is no more. She is free of the evil Exes, the League of Evil Exes.
Until...
Oh shit. Bonus boss fight, Nega Scott.
Oh. But he hears some whispering from Gideon's glasses, and he picks it up. And Gideon's like, you think you're done? You're not done until you can defeat yourself.
This is the secret weapon. He's all like dark looking, and he has the red eyes.
Yeah. Well, he's the negative version.
Every time there's like a dark opposite of a character, they always seem to be like twice as strong for whatever reason.
Yeah.
Just more badass than the regular character.
And stronger, and yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, Ramona and Knives, get into fighting stance, and he's like, no, I got to do this myself. So then it cuts to Ramona and Knives outside.
Literally right after.
Scott is walking out with Nega Scott, and they're just like chit-chatting.
Turns out he's a pretty cool dude.
He's a pretty cool dude.
They have a lot in common.
We're having brunch next week or whatever.
So he defeats Nega Scott by just becoming friends with him.
Yep.
They like chat it out, and they're like best friends now. I almost feel like that kind of shows you how self-centered Scott is that his best friend is himself.
Or maybe it's that he's finally accepting himself.
Maybe. Yeah, that's true. He's done fighting is what it is.
Yeah. And he did accept himself, because he accepted the mistakes he's made, and he's owned up to it, took responsibility for it, and he's definitely getting somewhere.
He's grown a lot, internally, and then Knives accepts that her relationship with Scott is over, and so Ramona's, I think she seems kind of traumatized by the whole experience of Scott having to go through all the Exes.
And she's kind of like, I've caused enough trouble, I'm just gonna go disappear again. And so she starts walking off, and Knives is like, fool, you've been fighting for her, go get her,
I like that Knives was, in the end, she actually says like, I'm too cool for you anyway. Yeah. I like the fact that she's supportive of Scott's relationship with Ramona.
Something about Scott, man. People just like to be his friend. So now she's his friend too.
He's very friendable,
I guess. And so he goes over there and he's like, well, if you're going to disappear, can I come along?
And she was pleasantly surprised. I think it's because when you're running, it's kind of a lonely life.
Yeah. And it seems like nobody's ever
offered to go with her.
Offered to run with her. So this time somebody actually is. And
through thick and thin, at this point too, he's kind of been through the worst of everything. So if he can withstand that, survive all the Exes, and still be interested in her, then I think that kind of proves to her that he's in it for the long haul.
And yet she was going to leave.
As confident as she came off, she was pretty self-conscious herself.
Yeah.
I think she kind of assumed that Scott was done with her and he didn't want anything to do with her. And Scott is like, he's just been so stuck in this tiny bubble that I think he's ready to step outside and kind of venture out into the world.
He's still, he's not like he's done growing. He's only, 22?
Exactly.
So he's got a lot of life to live.
Do they say how old Ramona is? Is she his age or is she younger?
I think so.
Around his age?
Yeah, I think they're around the same age.
Okay. Gotcha. So there you go. He also found someone that's more his age. It's more age appropriate and legal in the US.
Right. And Knives can go live her life and, date young Neil. Well, now Neil. Just Neil.
Do you feel like they would make a good couple?
Yeah.
He seems like
he was always kind of into her from the beginning too,
That is a wrap, folks. If you made it to the end of our podcast, then you now have to go out with each of Ramona's Exes.
Oh my goodness. Go out with them, not fight them?
You have to date all of them, starting with Matthew Patel.
And then you will have 7 Exes to fight your future.
Any final thoughts or closing comments?
Well, that's definitely a movie that I have loved since it came out, and it holds up. It holds up real well, I think.
Did it live up to your expectations before you saw the movie?
Definitely. Yeah, it was great. I loved it from the beginning. Like I walked out of that theater. You know, it's interesting because I mean, I don't know if it's Edgar Wright or what, but I walked out of that theater with the same feeling of satisfaction, I think, as the time that I walked out of Baby Driver.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
nice.
Baby Driver was such a satisfying movie to watch.
That's good. Yeah, I loved pretty much most of the movie. Like I said, it did kind of slow down after the Roxy fight, in my opinion.
Mhm.
But that's not to say that I thought the ending was terrible or anything like that. I just felt like outdoing themselves with each X that it was going to be hard to top
Yeah.
those fights. And I mean, Lucas Lee was hilarious. That's actually hilarious. Um, and then, Todd Ingram was a badass. He was probably the most badass one out of all of them, honestly.
Yeah.
And then Roxy, hilarious as well. That was cool because of Ramona actually having to fight for the first time.
I like seeing Ramona fight.
And as much as it was cringy to watch Matthew Patel, I liked that fight because that was like the only one that was like straight up just like a hand-to-hand combat type of
Yeah,
fight,
that's
up
true.
until he uses his powers at the very end. Did you have any favorite moments in the movie?
My favorite. Well, I have two. I told you already that my favorite line was when Roxy says, "Prepare to die." Obviously,
And then the garlic bread.
yeah. The bread makes you fat. But the part where Knives comes over, and then Scott jumps out the window, and Wallace is like, Scott's not here."
You notice how he closes the door because he understands, like, oh shit, yeah, he doesn't want Knives to know that he's here. So he,
Yeah.
he kind of like tries to like shut the door again, but he like flies out the window and then comes back for his jacket. It was just hilarious. And then runs behind Knives as she's talking to Wallace.
Yeah, and she kind of like looks back, like, okay.
And Kieran Culkin, man, shout out to him. He was great in this movie.
I know. I don't know. I'm just a big fan of those Kokins.
Apparently so. But before we head out, I actually introduced this new segment towards the end of the show that I started with Michael, and it's recommendations. So I wanted to see if you had any recommendations for just anything that you watched recently that it doesn't necessarily need to have been released recently. Just anything that you kind of are enjoying right now, film or TV that you wanted to share.
Well, I haven't actually gotten a chance to watch too much lately because I always end up like falling asleep in a chair with a baby or something like that. But Andrew and I were recently able to watch Don't Worry, Darling, which was interesting. And
I actually liked it.
you liked it? You
I didn't
saw
think
it?
I didn't
Yeah.
think it was my favorite movie, but I thought it was
Yeah,
solid.
exactly. That's how I felt. Like I enjoyed it. It had an
With Florence
interesting
Pugh, right?
story. Yeah, Florence Pugh, who's awesome and like everything.
Which is great.
And so I guess on that note, Florence Pugh, if you've never seen Midsummer and you're into horrors and see that one,
Oh, what's funny
that
is
movie was
that
nuts.
Michael actually had that as his recommendation, Midsummer.
Oh, that's funny.
So you're also recommending. So it must be that damn good.
It's nuts. That movie is nuts. You just need to watch it.
Yeah,
I think it'd be up your alley.
I've seen it. I was the
Oh,
one
you
that
have?
introduced him to it. Yeah,
Oh, really?
yeah.
And what'd you think of it?
Oh, I thought it was great. I love those creepy A24 type of movies. So I introduced
Yeah, that's true.
Midsummer and Hereditary to Michael.
That was the first Florence Pugh I think I've ever seen was Midsummer, and she has a very distinct frown. I don't know if you noticed that, like distressed face she makes when she's like about to cry or whatever.
Or she's in trouble, or she's in danger.
And so when I saw her in Black Widow, at first I didn't recognize her, and I was like, and then she does that frown at some point, like at the very beginning when she's, trying to escape, and I was like, oh yeah, that's that girl from Midsummer, And then I looked it up, and sure enough, it's Florence Pugh.
Yep.
Didn't know for a while that she's British, so
I did.
there's that.
Did I ever send you that video of her talking about British dishes? Like she's just like
Mm-hmm.
eating them as she's talking about them.
Yes,
It's really
yes,
interesting,
yeah.
right?
It is, yeah. Listening to her,
And she's like
speak
dressed up in
in
the
her
whole
accent and
getup and
stuff.
everything.
I know, it's great. It was good. It was a good video. The other show that I really like is like my favorite show of last year. I think was Ted Lasso. So
Nice.
if you know anybody with Apple Plus and you haven't watched that show yet, definitely do it.
Can you tell us just a little bit about what it's about, if people don't already know?
It's a comedy about an American football coach that moves to England, and he starts coaching soccer.
Football.
Yes, football out there. He, a lot of stuff happens, and just from that premise, I was like, oh, sports show. I'm not going to be into it, but it's definitely not so much about the sports. Like sometimes they don't even show, the soccer games or whatever.
Who's the main character?
What's his face?
I keep thinking Ed Helms for whatever
No,
reason.
Jason Sudeikis.
Ah, that's who it is.
Yeah, it's a real good show, and it's hilarious.
Okay. I also have a couple recommendations I would like to share.
Sure.
So recently, Brenda and I saw 2 movies in theaters. We saw The Whale with Brendan Fraser.
Oh.
This is the drama where he got like a standing ovation at the film festival. And holy crap, man. I've never been a huge Brendan Fraser fan. Like
really?
he was great in the Mummy movies and whatnot, but I never really felt like he was one of my favorite actors, but man,
Yeah.
he did fucking excellent in The Whale. And without giving anything away, it's basically about like a house-ridden, heavy-set guy.
Overweight dude, yeah.
Yeah, and he can't really leave the house, and it's just kind of showing like the struggles that he goes through health-wise and kind of personally with relationships, friendships, and stuff like that. So yeah, it's pretty sad, but highly recommend. And I also saw Avatar: The Way of Water.
I actually hear it's really good.
It's good. So I was one of the few apparently that actually liked the first one.
The first one's good, but
lately people are hating on Avatar, but I thought it was great. Like,
yeah, I thought it was good. I wasn't aware that people wanted more Avatar.
So I was one of the ones that also said that Avatar 1 did not need a sequel. I loved the way that they ended it.
Yeah.
And the second one, it's kind of more of the same. It has very similar plot lines, but man, the advancements in CGI are amazing. They're mind-blowing.
Actually,
we saw in 3D.
Andrew was telling me that you have to see it in, like IMAX or whatever, and that they switch frame rates back and forth through the movie.
Oh, do they?
So that's like the new thing. Like back then when the first Avatar came out, 3D movies, that technology in 3D movies was new.
Mm-hmm.
And now the new thing that this Avatar is introducing is frame rate switching. So
what does that feel like, or what does that do?
Well, I guess it's for some people, like, makes them sick or something like that. Like, you can't really distinguish that something different is going on, but it makes you feel weird. Because the frame rate is a lot faster, I believe. Yeah, it's a lot faster.
They purposely make you try to feel sick?
Like, no, it's not like that, but it's just like a kind of a surreal.
Oh, interesting. I didn't notice that myself.
Yeah, so I guess like the parts in the water or something like that, they do at a higher frame rate. So Andrew was telling me that he only does it sometimes at first and kind of slowly acclimates you to it as the movie goes on, and does it more and more as the movie goes on. So
it looks smoother and smoother. Okay.
I guess, yeah.
I mean, I thought it was an extremely solid movie, and if you even remotely like the first one, I recommend the second one. It's such a gorgeous movie. If nothing else, just go see it for how beautiful the water looks. Yeah. It's great.
I definitely want to see it.
Aflixionados is available on all of those fancy streaming services you folks like to use. New episodes drop on the first Saturday of each month, 5 a.m. Pacific. If you enjoy our content, go ahead and leave us a nice review. It'll be much appreciated. And again, thank you so much to listeners out there for joining Stephanie and I. This has been Aflixionados podcast episode 21, Scott Pilgrim versus the World, and we will see you all next time.
Yeah.
Need for ice cream. Need for ice cream.
Ice cream.
Yeah.